Hi everybody, welcome to Old Timer Noob Plays GMT Silver Bayonet. Today I'll be playing through the second turn of Scenario 4 Into the Valley. Before I do that though, I would like to go back and correct a small mistake that I made at the end of the last video, at the end of turn 1. I'd like to thank my viewers for your comments. I always appreciate tips, insights, and helpful commentary to help me improve my game. And I guess if I'm going to be putting videos on here showing people how to play the game, I should be doing it correctly. So I'm going to go back and make a minor correction, and I know that the purists among you won't like that, but in the interest of playing it correctly, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So when we left off, or at the end of the maneuver combat for that last video, here was the situation. I had one unit, Bravo Company, 1st of the 7th, was the subject of maneuver and assault combat in this hex. On the maneuver combat die roll, I came up with the result of D2 F1. The mistake that I made was that I took this 2 to mean 2 step losses for the FWA player, and I removed this unit from the map and gave the Pavin player 2 victory points. In reality, what I should have done was to take this 2, and as indicated by this explanation paragraph here, is divide that 2 by the TDV of the target hex, which in this case is 4, and that results in a fraction. And since we drop all fractions, that means that there's no effect as far as step losses go. I do have to fatigue the unit, so I will do that. And even though the bold type here indicates that a 2 hex retreat is required, an exception to that is units that are the subject of both maneuver and assault combat. If a retreat is required after maneuver combat, the unit cannot retreat and they must stand and face the assault. So I'll go back to the game. I'll place a fatigue counter on this unit. He won't be retreating, he's going to remain in this hex. I'll subtract the Pavin player's 2 victory points. And also I noticed that somehow this unit over here ended up with a stray first fire marker even though he hadn't fired. So I've removed that, and I've reset the FWA player's air points to 10 because we haven't used them yet for this turn. So those are all the changes I'm going to make. Hopefully it won't have too much of an impact on the game, but we're going to pick up right here where we left off at the end of turn 1, almost, and see how it goes. Alright, here we are back on the game screen. You see I have placed the fatigue marker on the FWA unit. And now, if we continue on with the standard sequence of play, we see that the next step is the assault combat step, and that begins with the defender allocating air and or artillery. So what I think I'm going to do is allocate all 10 air points and both artillery units against this hex. This is the assaulting hex. So that gives me a total of 18 points. And since I'm using air points, the FWA player will have the opportunity to conduct air defense as long as he has a number of steps adjacent to here that are greater than 10. So let's check it out. You have 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, there's 10 just in this stack alone. And then with these other ones, we have more than 11. So he has enough steps available to conduct air defense. So let's go over here to the air defense table. He'll get a -1 for a revealed artillery unit adjacent, which is the mortar that's in this hex here. So we're looking to get a 2 or less. And he rolled a 2. 2 minus 1 is a 1. That's a hit. So now we roll another die. That gives us a 1. And on the air point column, that means that we lose 4 air points. And that's 4 air points for this attack, but the asterisk indicates that the FWA player will permanently lose an air point. So when we begin the subsequent turns, we'll be 1 air point shy of what's indicated on the card here. Right, so if I subtract 4 air points from my current air points, that will give me only 6. So 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 4 is 14, so I have a total bombardment strength of 14. Let me go to the bombardment table. I'll be in this column right here. None of these modifiers will apply. Rolled a 1. I've never rolled so many 1s, 2s, and 3s as I have on Basil. Very interesting. Right, 14 with a 1 is a 4. Now we'll take this 4 and divide it by the always 2 TDV for the attacker, and that results in 2 step losses and a fatigue. So I think what I'll do is take the step losses from the mortar and the heavy weapons company, and then I will fatigue the mortar. So let me move the mortar to the bottom of the stack. I think he's on the bottom now. He is, and then I will fatigue him. So let me place the fatigue marker. I think that's in the right place. Yep. So the results of that were 2 step losses and a fatigue marker. Right now I can award the FWA player a victory point, or 2 victory points, and the air points marker will go to 0. This will be final fire, and this will have been the first fire. And I didn't place the target markers. I should have done that, but these things here, should have placed these. Alright, the next thing we're going to do, going back to the sequence of play, is the defender rolls first on the assault combat table. Now, even though the FWA player is fatigued, he can't conduct offensive combat, but he can use his defense strength of 4. So we'll go to the assault table on the 4 column. Let's see if any of these apply. No. Yes. So greater than or equal to 50% of the steps. We have 2 steps in this hex, and they're both fatigued, so that's 100%. So we're going to have to add 2 to our die roll on the 4 column. Roll a 9 plus 2 is 11. That is no effect. Now it's time for the attacker to roll on the assault combat table. So let's add up all the offensive firepower. We have 2, 6, 10, 14. Let's see if any of these apply. No, no. We're only assaulting with 1 hex, so that won't apply. There's no armor. He's not uncoordinated, so all we had to do is add terrain effects. And that is mountain jungle. So that's going to be a +2. So 14, was it 14 I said? 1, 2, 6, 10, yeah, 14 plus 2. It's a 7, plus 2 is a 9, that's a 1. So our FWA player will take 1 step loss here, and the Pavan player will get 1 victory point. Now, if units on both sides remain, both sides roll against the highest ER in their stack. For the Pavan, that's going to be a 5, and for the FWA player, even though he's fatigued, we can still use his efficiency rating. Even if there were other units, if his were the highest, we could still use it. So it would be 5 for both units. We'll roll for the Pavan first. 9, so he won't be attacking again. 3 for the FWA. So now we only have 2 defensive firepower. So going to the assault table, we'll be on the 2 column. We're still going to add +2 for being fatigued. So it's 8 plus 2 is 10. That is no effect. So now it's the second player turn. So now it's time for the FWA player. So we'll be starting with the FWA reinforcement phase. The FWA player does get a reinforcement company this turn, Delta 1st of the 7th. They're supposed to arrive in LZ X-ray. Now, even though there are no Pavan units adjacent to this X, the special rules say that the hot LZ applies to arriving FWA units. So I'm going to go ahead and roll for him to make sure he doesn't end up fatigued because of the hot LZ. So I'll go ahead and move him in here. I already put him in there. We only have 3 units in the hex, so we're within stacking limits, so nobody's efficiency rating is affected. So he's got to roll 6 or less to arrive unfatigued. And he rolled a 2, so he made it. The next thing is to move ground units. It would probably be a good idea to get this fatigue reduced unit away from these 3 aggressor stacks and maybe move him back to here. I'm thinking this is a good hex because the special rules say that any unit not adjacent to an enemy unit at the beginning of turn 29 can recover from fatigue. So hopefully there'll be no Pavin units there. So I think I'll move this guy along with his fatigue marker over to here, and that should be a total of 2, 3, 5 movement points of his allotted 6. Alright, and then the FWA player is not going to conduct any maneuver or assault combat, so he's not going to declare any combat. Offensive bombardment. I only have 4 bombardment points left, but all the Pavin units are in Mountain Jungle with a TDV of 4, and I don't have anybody adjacent, so I'd have a detriment to my die roll modifier. I'd have to add 1 since no friendly unit is adjacent, so I won't be conducting any offensive bombardment. Since I won't be conducting any combat, I'm not going to roll for coordination. There's no combat resolution phase, and that effectively ends the FWA player turn. So that brings us here to the record interface. Reset the FWA air points counter to 0. It actually should have already been on 0. And this was not the last turn of the scenario. So now we move on to game turn 28. The first thing is adjust FWA air points. Well, the FWA player should be receiving 15 air points this turn, but since he permanently lost one as a result of maneuver combat, the air defense fire, he's only going to have 14. So I'll place the air points marker on 14. Remove first and final fire markers for both sides. There we go. There's no fatigue recovery yet and no headquarters to be replaced. So now it's the Pavin's turn, and he has the opportunity to place new units. Let's see, this is turn 28. Let's see what he gets. It looks like he gets 2 infantry companies and another mortar, and they're going to arrive in hex 1626. Let me get rid of these assault markers. Alright, 1626 is right here. So I'll go ahead and place them. Alright, the next step is to move ground units. So let me think about this for just a second. I think I'm going to move these 2 or 3 full strength companies over to here, along with the reduced heavy weapons company. I'll leave the fatigue mortar here because he should be able to recover from fatigue next turn. Bravo 9 of the 66th, I think I'll move him to here, both companies. And then I'll move the remainder of the battalion. 3, 6, 3, 6, along with this mortar. I'll move these 2 companies over to here. And I think I'll move mortars up 1 hex each. So now even this hex back here is within mortar range, even though I have no friendly units adjacent. But they can still both reach here. Alright, so the next step will be combat declaration. Let's see what we have here. There's 12, 13 plus 5 is 18. Pretty strong defense here. I don't think maneuver combat would give me favorable odds. So I'll let these two stacks of units sit out this next combat, but I'm going to conduct assault from this hex right here. So I'll go ahead and place an assault marker. Offensive bombardment phase. Let's see. I have these two mortars here that I can use. There's no mortar in this hex. There's no mortar in this hex. And this mortar is going to be participating in the assault. So I can use these two mortars for offensive bombardment. Declare and resolve. Air defense, there is none. Resolve bombardment. Going to the bombardment table. None of these will apply. So I have a total of 4 bombardment points. I'll be rolling on the 4 column. 8. That is no results. So I can get rid of this, and I can get rid of this, and I can mark these mortars as first fired. Alright, no combat reaction. Combat resolution. Have to roll for attack coordination. Well, the only attack is going to be coming from here, so this stack of units is within the headquarters command range of 3, so I can roll against the headquarters efficiency rating of 6. Rolled a 4, so he's coordinated. There is no maneuver combat. The next step will be assault combat, beginning with the defender allocating air and or artillery. I want to see if I can place a big dent in the Pavin units here, so I'm going to allocate all 14 air points and all 8 artillery bombardment points against this stack. So let me place this over here. Mark these both as first fired. And I'm going to allocate 14 points of air. So since I'm allocating air points, the FWA player will have the opportunity to conduct air defense. Let's see how many steps he has available here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. He definitely has enough. So let's go to the air defense table. We'll be subtracting 1 from the die roll. 9 minus 1 is 8. That's a miss. So I'll be able to use all 14 air points. So 14 air points plus my 8 bombardment points will put me on the 20 plus column of the bombardment table. Let's roll. 1. Alright, that puts me here. 6. So I will take that 6 and divide it by the attacker's TDV, the always TDV of 2. That gives me 3 step losses and a fatigue. I was hoping that something significant like that would happen. Alright, so the FWA player will get 3 victory points. We'll move that to there. Air points will go down to 0. I can remove this marker. Markers, and then from this stack I have to extract 3 step losses. So I think I'll do the mortar. And these 2 units. So now I have 2 reduced companies, 2 full strength companies, and a reduced mortar. Alright, going back to the SOP. Now the defender rolls first on the assault combat table. The defender has in this hex 13 defense strength points. So I'll be on this column here. Let's see if any modifiers apply. No leader. The attack is not uncoordinated. No patrol markers. And nobody's fatigued. So it'll just be 13 points. Straight roll. 6. That is a 1. So the Pavan player will suffer another step loss. And I think I'll reduce or eliminate the heavy weapons company. And that will give the FWA player another victory point. Next comes the attacker rolls on the assault combat table. Let's see what we have left. 4, 8, 10, 11. Let's see if anything applies. No, 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 no. Plus terrain effects, we're in light jungle. Plus 1. So on the 11 column, plus 1 is an 8. That is no effect. Since we have units remaining in both hexes, we'll roll against the highest ER for each stack. 6 for the Pavan, 6 for the FWA. We'll do the Pavan first. So the Pavan player will not be assaulting again. The FWA player will. And again, he'll roll with 13 points. No die roll modifiers. He rolls a 7, which is another step loss for the Pavan. So I guess I'll take the mortar out of here. And that gives the FWA player another victory point. Alright. Now comes the second player turn. That would be the FWA. Well, I suppose I can remove this marker first. Alright, so we're in the FWA half of game turn 28. And in this turn, the FWA player is going to receive Bravo 2nd of the 7th in landing zone X-ray, and these 3 companies of 2nd Battalion over in landing zone Victor. Now, I did have a question about the special rule here about the hot LZ, so I reached out to the designer, Mitchell Land, and as usual, he was very prompt in his reply, and he just explained that this is really here as a reminder to use this rule. If you look up this rule in the rule book, it's actually in the campaign scenario rules under helicopter movement. And as I mentioned before, there are no helicopters in this scenario, but nevertheless, we're going to use the hot LZ rule. This is not a blanket application of a hot LZ to any arriving FWA unit, which I think I might have mentioned before. So we will have to apply the hot LZ rule to this hex, landing zone X-ray, but we won't have to use that rule when we land these reinforcements over here in landing zone Victor. So let's bring in Bravo Company into LZ X-ray, and we'll roll to see if he arrives successfully without being fatigued. And he rolled a 4, which is less than his efficiency rating, so that's good. Now these 3 companies will arrive in landing zone Victor. bindings on Victor's actually here, but I guess I can put it there. All right, now that they're on the map, our next step will be to move ground units. Well, Bravo Company is going to stay put. They're going to stay there and help defend LZ X-Ray, but Alpha Bravo and Charlie Company's 2nd and the 5th are going to hoof it over into this neighborhood to help out. So let's see. I'll move them one at a time. So that's 2, 4, 6. 2, 4, 6. And 2, 4, 6. All right, now comes combat declaration. So let me see what I can do here. I have 2 pretty strong stacks of FWA units. I think what I might do is conduct some maneuver assault with these units into this Bayonet hex, which only has a defense strength of 3. All right, let me do that. Oh, wrong hex. There we go. But it's going to be a maneuver combat. And then I think it's probably a good idea to do an assault with these guys into this hex. Yeah, okay. Offensive bombardment. Well, I've already used my air points for this turn, but I do have 2 artillery units that still have a second fire coming. So I think I will do that. I'll use 4 bombardment points against this Pavan stack over here. There won't be any ADF because I'm not using air points. And now I can resolve the bombardment. So going to the bombardment table, I have a total of 8 points. None of these modifiers apply. I'll be rolling on this column. Roll to 10, and that is a big whiff. All right, so now both of these guys have fired twice, so they're done. What's next? Combat reaction. There won't be any combat reaction. There also will not be any combat refusal. The Pavan player does have the option of retreating from combat if he rolls against his efficiency rating and passes, but he really wants to be here to try to take over this hex, or at the very least inflict some step losses. So he is not going to refuse combat. He's going to remain here. So the next thing is to determine combat odds. We'll do this hex first. Combat against this hex first. So combat odds. Here I have 9, 13 to 3 defense strength. So that's a good 4-to-1 ratio. All right, choose lead units. For the FWA, I'll use Bravo 2nd of the 7th. And for the Pavan, I'll use Delta 7 of the 66th, the Heavy Weapons Company. They both have an ER of 6, so there will be no column shifts. There's no difference in ER ratings. Right, attacker first, allocate support fire. Well, the FWA player has no artillery or air points left, but the Pavan player has these 2 mortar units here, and he is going to allocate mortars for support fire. So, place his target marker. All right, we'll roll for that. Going to the bombardment table. We'll be in the 4 column. None of these modifiers apply. Roll to 4. That's a 2. So this 2 will be the die roll modifier for maneuver combat for the defender. Put that there so I don't forget. And there is no maneuver support for the FWA player. So what's next? Roll the maneuver combat table and apply DRMs. Okay, so let's go to the maneuver combat table. We're in the 4 to 1 column. Roll a 1. Well, let's see if we have any modifiers here. No column shifts for being uncoordinated. No efficiency rating shifts. Maneuver combat, nobody's fatigued. No leader rating. Subtract the attacker's support result. The attacker has none. No armor. No, no, no. Plus terrain effects. This is mountain jungle, which is +2. And then plus the defender's support result. So the defender had a 2, so it's going to be +4. So 1 plus 4 is a 5 on the 4 to 1 column. And that tells us that we have to take this 2 divided by the TDV of the defending hex, which in this case is a 4, and that's a fraction, so we disregard that. No step losses, but the defender has to fatigue 1 unit, and the entire stack has to retreat 1 hex. Well, we have to start with the lead unit, which was Delta 7 of the 66th, so we'll fatigue him, and then the entire stack must retreat 1 hex. So that will relieve a little bit of pressure from LZ X-ray. So I can get rid of this, I can get rid of this, I can get rid of this. The FWA player now has the option of advancing into this hex. And I don't know if it would be a good idea to move anybody in here. I'd be splitting my firepower and my defense power, but it would keep everybody over here at least 1 hex away from LZ X-ray, which is the objective hex. What would you do? Leave me a comment, let me know. I don't really see a reason to weaken the power of this hex, so I'm going to leave everybody right where they are. So that takes care of this combat. Now we'll move on to this hex, assault combat. Now everybody from here is the same battalion, so they're automatically coordinated. So let's go back to the sequence of play. Attack coordination is done. There's no maneuver combat, so we move on to assault combat. The first step is the defender allocates artillery, and he has none left that he can use. So now he will roll on the assault combat table. So he has a defense strength of 7. So let's go to here, be on the 7 column. Let's see if anything applies. No leader, attacker's not uncoordinated, no patrols, nobody is fatigued. So straight roll on the 7 column. Rolled an 8. No effect. I'll get rid of this 2. Alright, now the FWA player can roll, and he has an attack strength of 9. Let's see if any modifiers apply. No, no. Plus terrain effects. So the Pavin player is in dense jungle. So we'll have to add 2 to the die roll. So on the 9 column, 2 plus 2 is a 4. That's a 1. So the Pavin player will suffer 1 step loss. Let's see. I think I'll just take it from the already reduced heavy weapons company. And that will give the FWA player another victory point. Now we check the ERs of both stacks to see if anybody is going to attack again. So the highest stack for the FWA player is a 6. We'll roll for him. So he gets another attack. For the Pavin player, it's a 5. Let's roll for him. and he will not get another attack. So again, the FWA player has an attack strength of 9, and he'll be adding 2 for train effects. 7 plus 2 is a 9, and that is no effect. So that brings us to the end of the second player turn. So air points are already at 0. This is not the last turn, so we'll be moving on now to turn number 3. And I think I will end this video here and come back and join me for turn number 3. We'll see how this turns out.